I signed my name on the marriage certificate worth $50 million, hands steady, eyes locked on Adrian Blackwell, the man who held my company's life in his perfectly manicured hands. Adrian needed a wife with a spotless record to appease his nervous shareholders. I needed capital to save the AI platform my dying sister made me promise to finish. We were two sharks in a glass tank, marrying for profit, sharing a bed for contract terms. But last night he whispered my name in his sleep, fingers reaching across the cold sheets. And this morning I found myself making coffee the way he likes it, black, 2 ice cubes, served in silence. Can the ice queen and the calculating bastard actually thaw each other's frozen? The office windows reflected nothing but darkness and my own ghost at 2:47 a.m. I'd been staring at the same pitch deck for 6 hours, trying to find the magic words that would make investors see what I saw. Revolutionary cancer detection, lives saved, futures rewritten. The email notification cut through the silence like a blade. Series B funding, rejected. Wellington Ventures regrets to inform you, not the right fit for our portfolio at this time. We wish you the best of luck. I read it 3 times. 4. Waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something different, something survivable. They didn't. My fingers found the locket at my throat, a habit worn smooth by 3 years of grief. Inside, Maya's face smiled back at me, frozen at 19, 3 weeks before the glioblastoma won. The photo was from her last good day, before the seizures, before she couldn't remember my name. She'd made me take out my phone and film her, weak voice forcing out words between labored breaths. Promise me, Sarah. Promise you'll finish the research. Other families shouldn't have to watch their daughters disappear piece by piece. I'd promised, sworn on everything that mattered. Some promises cost your career, your relationships, your sanity. This one had cost all 3. I pulled up the burn rate calculator, a spreadsheet I'd memorized down to the last cell. 30 days. That's how long Neuroscan had before I'd have to stand in front of my team of 12 brilliant engineers, people who'd taken pay cuts to work with me, who believed in the mission, and tell them their revolutionary platform would die with my sister's dream. The city sprawled below my window, 40 stories of indifferent concrete and glass. A million lights that didn't care about broken promises, or dead sisters, or startups bleeding out in sterile office parks. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. I drank it anyway. Tasted like failure. I picked up my phone, deleted the drafted email to 3 other venture firms. What was the point? They'd all say the same thing. Too risky, unproven market. Come back when you have FDA approval, which required money I didn't have to run trials I couldn't afford. Open my calendar instead. Tonight, the Tech Venture Gala at the Fairmont. Black tie, champagne, tech billionaires playing dress-up and pretending they cared about innovation instead of returns. One last shot at finding someone desperate enough or stupid enough to bet on a sinking ship. I pulled the locket chain over my head, set it on my desk next to the cold coffee and rejected pitch deck. Maya's face stared up at me from the tarnished silver. I'm trying, I whispered to the empty office. I'm still trying. Sarah Chen, a hand appeared in my peripheral vision, manicured nails catching the light, Patek Philippe watch worth more than 6 months of my server costs. I've been wanting to meet you. The ballroom smelled like expensive perfume and older money. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures melting slowly into political donations. I'd worn my only decent dress, black, simple, purchased 3 years ago for Maya's memorial service. Everyone else looked like they'd stepped out of Forbes. I turned from the bar, champagne halfway to my lips. Adrian Blackwell stood close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably had a pretentious name like Midnight Oud or Executive Power. Funny, I said. You rejected my Series A pitch 18 months ago in your Menlo Park office. Took you exactly 4 minutes to say no. I timed it. His smile didn't reach his eyes, cold blue like winter ice over deep water. The same expression I'd practiced in mirrors before investor meetings. The look that said, you're taking me seriously or you're wasting both our time. You wanted $12 million for a prototype with no clinical data and an FDA approval timeline that read like fiction, he said. His voice had the smooth precision of someone used to being listened to. I don't invest in fantasies, Miss Chen. I invest in certainty. And now? I took a sip, held his gaze. Around us, tech billionaires circled each other like well-dressed predators. Handshakes that meant lawsuits. Compliments that meant hostile takeovers. This was my world now. Sharks in Italian suits. Now you have phase 2 clinical data. 87% accuracy in early-stage glioblastoma detection across 43 patients. 3 hospital partnerships pending in Boston, Seattle, and Johns Hopkins. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a quarterly report. Now you're also bankrupt in 30 days, and your competitor just filed a patent for technology that looks remarkably similar to yours. My champagne glass cracked. Tiny fissure, spiderwebbing across baccarat crystal. Marcus Zhao, Adrian continued, watching my face for reaction. He had dinner with your CTO last week. The slanted door, Bordeaux, 1982. Marcus always serves that vintage before he makes an acquisition. Or steals one. I set down the glass before it shattered in my hand. My pulse hammered, but I kept my expression flat. Never show weakness. Maya taught me that, back when she was strong enough to teach anything. What do you want, Mr. Blackwell? To talk, somewhere without... His eyes flicked to the crowd around us. A tech journalist was watching, phone probably recording. Without witnesses performing for each other. He gestured toward the terrace exit, not asking, expecting. I should have walked away. Should have known that men like Adrian Blackwell didn't offer help. They offered chains wrapped in contracts. But I had 30 days and 0 options. I followed him into the night. His penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor of the Millennium Tower. The private elevator opened directly into his living space. No hallway, no buffer between public and private. Just immediate, overwhelming wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting I couldn't afford to look at. The space felt sterile. White leather couches that had never been sat on. Chrome fixtures catching LED light at geometric angles. Bookshelves full of investment theory and biographies of dead tycoons. Nothing that suggested a human actually lived here. No photos, no plants, no coffee ring stains on the glass tables. It looked like a magazine spread, or a mausoleum. Adrian poured whiskey from a crystal decanter, 2 glasses, 2 fingers each. Handed me one without asking if I wanted it. Marcus Zhao didn't hack your system, he said, settling into the white couch like it was a throne. Your CTO sold it to him. $500,000, wire transfer to a Cayman account last Tuesday at 3:47 p.m. The whiskey burned down my throat. I didn't let the shock show on my face. David, my first hire. The Stanford grad who'd believed in the mission enough to take half-market salary. Who'd worked midnight launches with me. Who'd promised Maya on her deathbed that we'd change the world together. I have proof, Adrian continued, sliding a manila folder across the coffee table. Bank statements, email threads, patent filing documents, all very thorough, all very damning. But that's not why you're here. He pulled up a news article on his tablet, turned it toward me. Wall Street Journal, federal antitrust investigation into Blackwell Capital. Photos of him leaving courthouse, stone-faced, surrounded by lawyers. The headline called him a corporate predator and monopolistic threat. 72 hours, Adrian said. His voice stayed level, but something tightened around his jaw. That's how long I have before I walk into a room full of politicians who want to make an example of what happens to men like me. Men who destroy 40 companies for sport? Men who win. They don't like that. He set down his glass. The ice clinked against crystal, the only sound in the vast empty space. The optics are bad, Sarah. The ruthless bachelor who buys and crushes. They want blood. They want humanity. They want to see me domesticated. I laughed. Actually laughed. So hire a PR firm. Donate to an orphanage. Isn't that what billionaires do when they need reputation management? They want to see me married. He said it like he was discussing quarterly projections. Someone respectable. Someone with their own success story. Someone who makes me look like I have a soul. The whiskey suddenly felt heavy in my stomach. My board is ready to vote me out, he continued. My limited partners are nervous about the investigation. If I lose control of the firm, I lose everything. So I need a wife. He moved closer, studying my face like I was a balance sheet. And you need what I can give you. $50 million. The number hung between us, unspoken but absolutely understood. Outside the windows, the city glittered, cold and distant and completely indifferent to two people negotiating their futures like corporate merger terms. No. I set down my glass hard enough that whiskey sloshed over the rim onto his expensive coffee table. Absolutely not. You didn't let me finish outlining the terms. I don't care about your terms. I'm not a prop for your legal theater, Mr. Blackwell. I'm not some actress you can rent to play loving wife while you convince politicians you have a soul. Adrian's expression didn't change. That same calculated coldness, like my refusal was merely an expected variable in his spreadsheet. Marcus Zhao will have FDA approval in 6 months with your stolen algorithms, he said, voice level. Your patents will be worthless if his product hits the market first. Your team will scatter to Google, Apple, Microsoft, whoever offers them actual salaries. Your sister's platform will die in bankruptcy court. Everything you sacrificed will mean precisely nothing. Don't. My voice went sharp enough to draw blood. Don't you dare talk about my sister. Why not? She's the reason you're standing in my penthouse at midnight instead of walking away. He moved to the window, stared out at the city spread below us like a circuit board. She's the reason you worked 100-hour weeks for 3 years. The reason you didn't attend your father's funeral because you had a Series A pitch in Boston that morning. The reason you haven't had a relationship, a vacation, or a full night's sleep since she flatlined in that hospital bed. Each word landed like a scalpel finding nerve endings. True. All of it brutally, unfairly, surgically true. I've done my research, Sarah. You're brilliant, driven. You've sacrificed everything human about yourself for this company because you made a deathbed promise to a 19-year-old girl with terminal cancer. He turned back toward me, and for just a second, something almost human flickered across his face. So let me ask you a very simple question. What's more important to you right now? Your pride or keeping your promise? I wanted to throw my glass at those floor-to-ceiling windows, wanted to watch expensive crystal shatter across his perfect view of a city that didn't care if either of us lived or died. Wanted to prove that Sarah Chen didn't bend for anyone, not investors, not billionaires, not men who bought and sold companies like chess pieces. But Maya's voice echoed through my skull, not the strong version, the Maya who'd beaten me at strategy games and argued about artificial intelligence ethics at dinner. The weak one, the dying one, barely able to whisper but forcing out words anyway because she knew they were her last. Make them hear me, Sarah. Make them see what you saw. Promise me. Promise. I'd sworn on a stack of medical journals because she'd been too weak to lift a Bible. Sworn I'd build something that would make her suffering count for something more than just another cancer statistic. What exactly would this arrangement entail? My voice came out flat. Professional. The tone I use with corporate lawyers and accountants. Adrian's expression shifted. almost respect, almost surprised that I hadn't stormed out and slammed his door. I left Adrian's penthouse at 3 a.m. with no answer given and 12 hours to decide if I was willing to sell my life for my sister's legacy. The elevator descent felt like falling through 42 floors of bad decisions. My apartment existed in a different universe from his sterile palace. Fifth floor walk up in a building where the heat works sporadically and the neighbors' arguments bled through walls thin as promises. One bedroom, kitchen the size of a closet, but it was mine, paid for with money I'd actually earned instead of inherited or extracted from failing companies. I'd poured every spare dollar into Neuroscan, paid myself minimum wage for 3 years, lived on instant ramen, black coffee, and the kind of ambition that looked like insanity to anyone with a functioning sense of self-preservation. My laptop sat where I'd left it 12 hours ago, screen dark, email notification light blinking red like a tiny warning beacon. I pulled up my inbox. Maybe there was another investor I'd missed. Maybe someone else believed in cancer detection enough to bet on. The subject line stopped my heart mid-beat. Patent filing alert, Neuroscan neural detection system, application submitted. Marcus Zhao's company, filed 4 hours ago while I'd been drinking expensive whiskey and negotiating my future like it was a corporate merger. Every algorithm, every training model, every piece of code my team had spent 3 years perfecting, stolen and packaged under someone else's name. But that wasn't what made my hands start shaking. The co-inventor listed on the patent application was David Park, my CTO, my first hire. The Stanford graduate who'd taken half market salary because he believed in the mission, who'd worked midnight product launches with me fueled by pizza and hope, who'd stood at Maya's hospital bed and promised a dying girl, that we'd change the world together. I called him. My fingers moved automatically, muscle memory overriding rational thought. It rang once, twice. Sarah, his voice sounded tired, guilty, like he'd been expecting this call. I can explain. How much? My voice came out mechanical, distant, like it belonged to someone else entirely. Silence stretched across the line, filling with all the things we'd never say to each other again. How much did it cost to betray a dead 19-year-old girl, David? I'm curious about the exact dollar amount. $500,000. He said it quickly, like ripping off a bandage. Enough to pay off my student loans. Enough to finally buy a house, start a family, have an actual life. You paid us in equity and hope, Sarah. Equity that's worthless when the company dies in 30 days. Marcus paid in cash. Real money. Now money. We had a deal. We had your obsession. His voice turned sharp, defensive. Your sister's ghost haunting every decision, every pivot, every sleepless night. I'm 26 years old and I have nothing to show for 3 years except dark circles and an apartment I can barely afford. So yes, I took Marcus's offer. And I'd do it again. The line went dead. I sat on my apartment floor, scratched hardwood that had seen better decades, and watched sunrise paint the walls gold through windows that needed washing. My phone stayed clutched in my hand, screen showing David's contact info. I should delete it, should erase every trace of him from my life. Instead, I stared at Maya's photo on my bookshelf. 19 years old, smiling, alive, believing her big sister could do anything. Adrian Blackwell had been right about everything. Pride or promise. The choice wasn't even close. The door to Adrian's office opened before I could knock. He stood there at 7 a.m., suit already immaculate, tablet in hand, looking like he'd been expecting me to crack at exactly this hour. Maybe he had been. Men like Adrian Blackwell build empires on predicting human breaking points. The terms have changed, I said without greeting or preamble. He stepped aside, gestured me into his office, another sterile space of glass and chrome and carefully curated power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the financial district. His desk held one laptop, One phone, one coffee cup. Nothing personal, nothing human. The morning light made everything look sharp enough to draw blood. I need $75 million, I said. 50 for operations and runway, 25 to buy out Marcus Zhao's patent filing before USPTO approval. I want a seat on your investment committee, board observer rights, quarterly review authority. And when this marriage arrangement terminates, when your hearing is resolved and my company is stable, I want a clean exit. No strings, no complications, no lingering obligations. Adrian poured coffee from a French press. Black, no sugar. Handed me a cup without asking if I wanted it. Of course I wanted it. I hadn't slept. Counter offer. He set down his own cup, pulled a different contract from his desk drawer. Fresh, like he'd been drafting terms since I'd left 12 hours ago. 50 million investment at 30% equity. You get the patent buyout. You get operational funding. You maintain majority control and CEO authority. Board seat is non-negotiable. I don't do observer positions, but he slid the contract across his desk. The paper whispered against polished wood. You don't just play my wife at press conferences and charity galas. You move into my penthouse. You live there. 24 hours, 7 days, for 6 months minimum, extending to 12 if the investigation runs long. That wasn't the original deal. That was before your CTO's betrayal hit TechCrunch this morning. He turned his tablet toward me. The headline screamed across the screen. Neuroscan CTO jumps ship to Zhao Industries. Patent filing raises questions about startup's future. Before Marcus Zhao started telling Bloomberg reporters that you're a failed founder who can't inspire loyalty. Before the narrative became, desperate woman loses her team. I scanned the article, quotes from anonymous sources, speculation about mismanagement, photos of David leaving Marcus's offices, smiling like he hadn't just gutted everything we'd built. The optics changed overnight, Adrian continued. Now I don't just need a wife who shows up for photo opportunities. I need one who actually lives with me, someone the paparazzi can photograph buying groceries, walking to coffee shops, looking domestic and real and permanent. I stared at the contract, at the clean, clinical language that would turn my entire existence into performance art for 6 months. Why me specifically? You could have anyone. Actresses, socialites, women who actually want to marry a billionaire. Because you're the only person I've met in 10 years who looks at me exactly the way I look at them. He met my eyes. Blue ice meeting dark determination. Like a business transaction. Like a tool to accomplish goals. No romance. No delusions about love or soulmates or destiny. Just two people using each other to survive in a system designed to crush us both. Something in his voice suggested he'd been crushed before. That the cold calculation wasn't natural, it was learned. I picked up the pen he'd placed next to the contract. One amendment, I said. I keep my own bedroom, my own office space, my own physical autonomy within the shared living arrangement. Agreed. East Wing is yours entirely. I signed. Watch my name appear in black ink next to his. Sarah Chen, not Sarah Chen Blackwell, not yet. That particular performance started tomorrow. The marriage license required 2 witnesses. Adrian had arranged for his corporate lawyer and executive assistant, both bound by non-disclosure agreements thick as phone books, and probably more legally binding than our actual wedding vows. We signed at City Hall on a Thursday morning. The building smelled like industrial floor cleaner and the broken dreams of people who came here for divorces, name changes, restraining orders. Romance went to die in government buildings with fluorescent lighting and plastic chairs. Do you, Sarah Chen, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, for better or worse, in sickness and health, till death do you part? Yes. No hesitation, no emotion. A business transaction required efficiency. Do you, Adrian Blackwell, Take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife. Yes. He cut off the officiant mid-sentence. The man looked disappointed, like we'd personally robbed him of his practiced speech about love and commitment and the sacred bonds of matrimony. He stamped the marriage certificate anyway, made it official with a seal that probably cost taxpayers 3 cents. Congratulations, he said, voice flat. You may kiss the bride. Adrian and I looked at each other. Neither of us moved. We'll skip that part, I said. The officiant shrugged, probably seen weirder. This was government work in a major metropolitan area. Outside, Adrian's driver waited. Black Mercedes S-Class, tinted windows, the kind of car that costs more than most people's yearly salary. He opened the door without making eye contact. Professional invisibility. Inside the car, Adrian handed me a credit card. American Express Centurion. Black. Unlimited spending limit. For appearances, buy whatever you need. Clothes, jewelry, whatever wives are supposed to buy. I turned the card over. My name was already engraved on it. Sarah Chen Blackwell. I'm keeping my professional name, I said. The hyphen is just for the press. For voters and shareholders and people who need to believe we're actually in love. He typed something on his phone, probably already handling the next crisis in his portfolio. Use whatever name you want in private. I don't care about your identity. I care about your performance. Fair enough. I didn't care about his identity either. I cared about his money and what it could buy. Specifically, Maya's legacy saved from bankruptcy. Movers will collect your belongings this afternoon, he continued without looking up from his screen. I've cleared the east wing. You'll have your own office, bedroom, bathroom. We'll share the living room, kitchen, and main study when we need to maintain appearances for household staff or unexpected visitors. When do we tell people about the marriage? My PR team is drafting the announcement now. Surprise engagement last month. Private ceremony this morning. Madly in love. Too impatient to wait. His mouth twisted slightly. Not quite a smile. Romantic spontaneity looks better than calculated contract marriage. The car merged into morning traffic. I watched the city blur past. Millions of people going to real jobs, having real relationships, living real lives that didn't involve selling themselves to billionaires for venture capital. One rule, Adrian said, finally looking at me. Those cold blue eyes that missed nothing and felt less. No falling in love. This is a contract. It has a defined termination date. Don't confuse convenience with connection. Don't mistake proximity for intimacy. I almost laughed, as if I had emotional capacity left for love after 3 years of sacrificing everything human about myself at the altar of startup success. Don't worry, Mr. Blackwell, I said. I'm very, very good at keeping things professional. The title felt deliberately cold, intentionally distancing. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Adrian, he corrected. If we're married, you should probably use my first name, at least in front of witnesses. Adrian, I tested the word. It felt foreign, transactional, like learning to pronounce a client's name for a pitch meeting. Perfect. That's exactly what this was. 7 cardboard boxes. That's what my entire life amounted to when professional movers arrived at my 5th floor walk-up at 2 p.m. Books mostly, technical manuals on machine learning, medical journals about cancer detection. The mechanical keyboard I'd coded Neuroscan's first prototype on, keys worn smooth from 3 years of midnight sessions. Everything else had been sold, donated, or abandoned years ago. Furniture from IKEA, kitchen supplies I'd never used because I lived on takeout, clothes that didn't matter because I only wore hoodies and jeans to the office anyway. The movers loaded my life into their truck in 12 minutes flat. Adrian's penthouse felt different in daylight. Less like a showroom, more like a museum. Beautiful, expensive, untouchable. The kind of space that made you afraid to leave fingerprints. My boxes sat in the hallway of the East Wing like refugees waiting for asylum. The movers had stacked them neatly against the wall and left without making eye contact. They probably moved stranger things for Adrian Blackwell. My new bedroom was bigger than my old apartment. King bed with white sheets that probably cost four figures. Nightstands made of actual wood instead of particle board. A closet that could fit a small car, currently empty except for a single garment bag hanging dead center. I unzipped it. A dress, cream silk, designer label I'd only seen in magazines, tailored to my exact measurements. Of course, Adrian had my measurements. He probably had my blood type, social security number, and childhood trauma documented in a file somewhere. A note card tucked into the bag, handwritten in precise block letters. For tomorrow's press conference, wear this. Hair and makeup team arrives at 6 a.m. A. Not even a full signature, just an initial. Efficient. I hung the dress back up, started unpacking boxes, put Maya's photo on the nightstand, the only thing that made the clicks echoed in the empty room. Too loud. Sarah, Adrian's voice from the doorway made me jump. I hadn't heard him approach. He moved quietly for a man his size. I turned. He'd loosened his tie, first sign of anything less than perfect control I'd witnessed. His sleeves were rolled up. 5:30 p.m. on a Thursday, and he looked like he'd been up for 20 hours straight. Probably had been. The press conference is at 9 a.m. tomorrow, he said. My communications director almost respect. There's one logistical issue. He shifted slightly. The master bathroom is connected to both bedrooms. My contractor is renovating the guest bath. Pipe burst last week. Water damage. It'll be fixed within 7 days, but until then, we'll need to share. I shower at 5 a.m. You won't even know I'm there. Fine. Kitchen is fully stocked. Cook whatever you want. Housekeeper comes Mondays and Thursdays. Don't be alarmed when you hear someone at 7 a.m. Noted. He started to leave. Stopped halfway through the door. If you need anything, for the company. Adrian's showering off the day. His laptop chimed from his office. Some notification he'd programmed to wake him every hour. Footsteps crossed hardwood. A door closed. That night, lying in expensive sheets that smelled like luxury detergent instead of home, I heard him more clearly. The shower at exactly 5 a.m., precise as a Swiss watch. His footsteps padding past my door, the mechanical keyboard from his office clicking until 3 a.m., same cadence as mine, like we were coding in the same language from different rooms. I'd married a man who apparently never slept, which made two of us. I pulled up Neuroscan's code repository on my laptop, found the sections David had stolen, started rewriting them from memory, line by line, while my husband worked somewhere 3 doors down and 2 walls away. 2 sharks in a glass tank. The water was going to get very, very bloody before one of us learned to breathe air. The press conference room at the Fairmont smelled like anticipation and expensive coffee. 50 reporters, twice as many cameras, all pointed at the small stage where Adrian and I would perform our first public lie together. Rachel, his communications director, had drilled me for 2 hours. What to say, how to smile, where to look. She'd transformed me from startup founder in hoodies to billionaire's wife in cream silk, my hair blown out into soft waves that probably cost more than my first laptop. Remember, Rachel whispered backstage, adjusting my collar for the 3rd time. You're madly in love. You can't believe your luck. This man is everything you've ever wanted. I nodded, tried to look like a woman who'd married for love instead of $50 million in patent protection. Adrian appeared beside me, suit immaculate, expression unreadable. He offered his hand. I took it. His palm was warm, steady, completely devoid of the nerves churning through my stomach. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. We walked onto the stage together. Camera flashes exploded like small supernovas. Questions erupted before we even reached the podium. Mr. Blackwell, how long have you been together? Sarah, did you know about the antitrust investigation? Is this marriage a publicity stunt? Adrian's hand tightened slightly on mine. Not painful, just present, anchoring. He stepped to the microphone. Thank you all for coming. I'll keep this brief because I know you have deadlines, and I have a beautiful wife who deserves better than watching me talk to reporters all morning. Polite laughter. Calculated charm. He was good at this. 6 months ago, I attended a healthcare innovation gala. Terrible wine, boring speeches, the usual fundraiser tedium. Then I met Sarah Chen. He turned toward me, and something in his expression shifted, softened. She cornered me by the dessert table and spent 20 minutes explaining why current cancer detection methods are fundamentally broken. She didn't care that I was a billionaire. She cared that I might be smart enough to understand her work. The lie sounded like truth. That's what made Adrian Blackwell dangerous. I fell in love with her brilliance first, her stubbornness second, her complete inability to suffer fools third. Another smile, this one reaching his eyes. Oscar-worthy performance. We kept it quiet because Sarah's company was in a sensitive fundraising phase, and she didn't want the relationship to complicate her professional reputation. But last week, I asked her to marry me. She said yes. We didn't want to wait. He looked at me, expectant. My turn. I stepped to the microphone, heart hammering against my ribs. I never expected to fall in love with someone like Adrian. We're very different people from very different worlds. But he's the only person I've met who sees my work as more than just a business opportunity. He sees it as what it is, a promise to my sister, who died of glioblastoma at 19, a promise to save other families from what mine went through. My voice cracked slightly on sister, not planned, just real grief leaking through the performance. Adrian's hand found the small of my back, steadying. The gesture looked protective, loving, completely calculated. We're very happy, I finished, and we'd appreciate privacy as we start this new chapter together. The questions came like machine gun fire. We deflected, smiled, performed our roles perfectly. When it was over, Rachel ushered us backstage, beaming like we just won an election. Perfect, she said. Absolutely perfect. The crack in your voice about your sister? Brilliant touch, very humanizing. I didn't tell her it wasn't a touch. It was just pain, leaking out where I couldn't control it. Adrian's hand was still on my back. He removed it the moment we were out of camera range. Well done, he said. Cold professionalism back in place. The car is waiting. We have a flight to catch. Flight? Honeymoon. 4 days at a resort in Napa Valley. Rachel booked it. The paparazzi will be there. We'll be photographed looking domestic and in love. Of course, even the honeymoon was performance art. The resort occupied 200 acres of manicured vineyard and architectural perfection. Our suite had a private infinity pool, a view of rolling hills, and a king bed I had no intention of sharing. Adrian dropped his bag by the door, pulled out his laptop, immediately started working. There's a couple's massage at 3, he said without looking up. Paparazzi will be stationed outside the spa. We need to look relaxed, intimate. A massage, wonderful. I unpacked my own laptop. I'll be ready. We worked in silence for 2 hours, him on his side of the suite, me on mine. The only sounds were keyboard clicks and occasional phone calls he took on the balcony, voice sharp as he demolished someone's acquisition proposal. At 2:45, I changed into the spa robe provided, white, plush, monogrammed with the resort logo. Adrian emerged from the bathroom in matching attire, looking distinctly uncomfortable. I hate massages, he muttered. Then why book one? Because Rachel says couples who get massages together look emotionally connected. Something about shared vulnerability. He checked his watch. We have to sell this, Sarah. The photographers will be everywhere. The spa smelled like eucalyptus and lavender. Soft music played. Other couples wandered through in robes, holding hands, whispering to each other. We probably look like them, two people in love, stealing a romantic weekend. Our massage therapist led us into a private room, side-by-side tables, candles, more soft music designed to make people relax. I lay down, closed my eyes, tried not to think about how Adrian was less than 3 feet away, also lying down, also vulnerable in a way that didn't come naturally to either of us. The massage started, professional hands working knots out of my shoulders. I'd been carrying tension for 3 years. My body didn't remember how to let go. "You're very tight," my therapist murmured. "Try to breathe." Beside me, Adrian made a sound, almost a grunt of discomfort. "Mr. Blackwell also has significant muscle tension," his therapist said, "especially through the neck and upper back. Do you work at a computer often?" "Constantly." Adrian's voice sounded strained. "You both need to take better care of yourselves. Stress will destroy your bodies before you even realize it's happening." I opened one eye, glanced over at Adrian. His face was pressed into the massage table cradle, expression hidden, but his hands were clenched into fists. He hated this. Hated being touched, being vulnerable, being anything other than perfectly controlled. I understood that completely. "Breathe," I said quietly. "Just breathe through it." His fists unclenched slightly. "You too." Something about that moment, two control freaks forcing themselves to relax in the name of good optics, struck me as absurdly funny. I bit back a laugh. Adrian's shoulders shook. Once. Twice. He was laughing too, silently. Both of us trying not to crack, while strangers rubbed scented oil into our backs. The absurdity of our situation hit me like a wave. Married for money, honeymooning for publicity, getting massages for paparazzi photos. Two sharks pretending to be dolphins. My therapist finished. So did Adrian's. They left us alone to relax and center yourselves. Adrian sat up first. "That was the most uncomfortable hour of my life." "Same," I pulled on my robe. "But did we look emotionally connected?" "Rachel will tell us when she sees the photos." He tied his robe. Next on the agenda, wine tasting at 5. Very public. Lots of hand-holding. Of course, because nothing says true love like performing intimacy for photographers. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Welcome to my world, Mrs. Chen Blackwell." The vineyard stretched across hills that caught golden hour light like a painting. Adrian and I walked through rows of grapevines, fingers loosely interlaced, performing for cameras we could see positioned on distant ridges. A sommelier guided us through tastings, Cabernet, Pinot, blends with pretentious names. Adrian swirled, sniffed, tasted with practiced expertise. I drank it like wine and tried to look sophisticated. "You know your varietals," the sommelier said to Adrian, impressed. "My father collected." Adrian's voice went flat. "He had a cellar worth $2 million. When he died, I sold every bottle, donated the proceeds to cardiac research." The sommelier looked uncomfortable, moved on to the next vintage quickly. I glanced at Adrian. "Cardiac research?" "Heart attack. Dropped dead at 53 in his office. Found him myself when I came in for an internship interview." He took another sip, expression unchanged. "He worked 80-hour weeks for 30 years, built an empire, died at his desk with no one around him. I was 18. Something in my chest twisted, not quite sympathy, more like recognition. "My mother worked herself to death too," I said quietly. "Different reason. Medical bills from Maya's treatment. She took extra shifts, stopped sleeping, stopped eating. Her heart gave out 6 months after we buried my sister. The doctors said it was stress-induced cardiomyopathy. I say she died of grief." Adrian looked at me. Really looked like he was seeing something other than a convenient business partner. "So we're both orphans building monuments to dead people." "Apparently." I swirled my wine. "Does it ever feel worth it? The sacrifice?" "No." His honesty surprised me. "But I don't know how to stop. The machine runs whether I'm happy or not. Success doesn't care about fulfillment." The sommelier returned, oblivious to the conversation he'd interrupted, poured another vintage, explained terroir and tannins. Adrian's hand tightened around mine, not for the cameras, just for a moment. Human connection between two people who'd forgotten how to be human. Then the moment passed. He released my hand, went back to swirling wine and looking like a man on a romantic honeymoon with his beautiful wife. The performance continued. Back at the suite, Adrian's laptop was already open before his jacket hit the chair. I poured myself wine from the complimentary bottle, sat on the balcony, watched stars appear over Vineyard Hills. "The board wants to meet you," Adrian's voice carried from inside. "Before the hearing, they want to assess whether you're good for my reputation." "Of course they do." I didn't turn around. "When?" "Next week. Dinner at Daniel." Very formal, very judgmental. I can handle judgmental board members. I've pitched to venture capitalists. Same species, different habitat. He appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against interior light. "They're going to ask invasive questions. About us, about your company, about whether this marriage is real." "Then we better have our story straight." I sipped wine. "What do you want me to say when they ask how we fell in love?" "The dessert table story works. Stick to that, but add details. What I was wearing, what you were drinking. Make it feel real." "What were you wearing?" "I don't remember. Pick something expensive and boring." "That's helpful." I set down my glass. "This would be easier if we actually knew each other, Adrian. If we'd spent more than 48 hours in each other's presence before getting married." He stepped onto the balcony, leaned against the railing beside me. "What do you want to know?" "Anything, everything. I know your net worth and your court dates. I don't know if you have siblings or what you eat for breakfast or why you never sleep." "No siblings. Only child. Eggs usually when I remember to eat. And I don't sleep because the nightmares are worse than the exhaustion." That last part came out raw, unintended honesty. "Nightmares about what?" "Finding my father, walking into his office, seeing him slumped over his desk. The paramedics said he'd been dead for hours. I'd walked past his office 3 times that morning, didn't check on him because I assumed he was busy." His hands gripped the railing. "Now I work until 3 a.m. because stopping feels like dying." I understood that, understood it completely. "I dream about Maya's last day," I said. "She couldn't remember my name, kept calling me by our childhood dog's name. She was scared, didn't understand why her body was failing. I held her hand and lied, told her everything would be okay. She died believing that lie." "At least you were there." Adrian's voice went rough. "At least she wasn't alone. Neither was your father. You found him. That counts for something." "Does it?" We stood in silence. Two workaholics building monuments to guilt. Two people who'd sacrificed everything human on the altar of success and couldn't figure out how to stop bleeding. "Navy suit," I said finally. "At the gala, you were wearing a navy suit with a silver tie. I was drinking cheap Chardonnay because the good stuff ran out. You found me by the dessert table trying to decide if the tiramisu was worth the food poisoning risk." Adrian turned to look at me. "Why those details?" "Because when your board asks, I want to look them in the eye and make them believe I remember every second of meeting you." I met his gaze. "We're selling a story, Adrian. Let's at least make it a good one." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition that we were more alike than either of us wanted to admit. "The tiramisu was worth it," he said. "I had some. Didn't die." "Good to know. I'll add that to our origin story." The sound of running water woke me at 5:02 a.m. I opened my eyes to unfamiliar ceiling, unfamiliar luxury, unfamiliar reality. Right. Resort suite. Fake honeymoon. Husband in the shower. I pulled on workout clothes. Went for a run through vineyard paths while morning mist clung to grapevines like secrets. Ran until my lungs burned and my thoughts quieted. Came back sweating, clearer. Adrian sat on the balcony, coffee in hand, already dressed in business casual. His laptop glowed in dawn light. "You run," he observed. "You work." I grabbed water from the mini fridge. "We all have our coping mechanisms." "How far?" "5 miles. You?" "I don't run, I box. There's a gym at my building. I use it at 4 a.m. before the traders arrive." "So we're both morning psychopaths." "Apparently." He gestured to the coffee pot. "Made extra if you want some." I poured a cup. Black, no sugar. Same as him. Sat in the other balcony chair. "Rachel sent the schedule for today," he said, eyes on his screen. "Breakfast in the resort restaurant. Very public, lots of other guests. Couples cooking class at 11. Photography session at 2. A cooking class? Really? Paparazzi gold, apparently. Couples who cook together stay together, or some nonsense like that." He typed something. "Just smile. Follow the chef's instructions. Don't burn anything." "What are we making?" "French cuisine. Something with too many steps and pretentious plating." "Perfect. Nothing says authentic love like struggling with hollandaise sauce for photographers." He glanced up, almost smiled. "You're surprisingly good at this." The sarcasm while performing sincerity. "Years of fundraising. You learned to pitch with a smile while dying inside." "Same, except I learned it from my father. He could destroy your career while making it sound like helpful advice."
Did he destroy many careers?
43 documented cases of competitors he bankrupted. He kept a list in his office. Called it his wall of victories. I burned it after he died. I studied his face, the careful blankness that hid decades of complicated grief. "Your turn," he said. "What did your mother teach you?" "That sacrifice is love. That you prove you care by working yourself to death for the people you're trying to save." I stared at my coffee. Terrible lesson. I internalized it completely. We're both products of toxic productivity. Is there any other kind? The sun rose higher, burned off mist, revealed the vineyard in sharp morning clarity. "We should shower and change," Adrian said. "Breakfast reservations in 45 minutes. "I'll be quick." I was halfway to the bathroom when he spoke again. "Sarah?" I turned. "Thank you for making this bearable, for not making me pretend you're something you're not." "Same to you." We understood each other. Maybe that was enough. The cooking class took place in the resort's demonstration kitchen, all stainless steel and professional equipment, and the kind of gleaming surfaces that made everything look like a television show. 8 couples, 1 celebrity chef with an accent thick enough to butter, too many cameras disguised as documentation for your memories. Rachel had arranged those, obviously. Adrian and I stood at our designated station, wearing matching aprons that said, "The Blackwells," in embroidered script. His fit perfectly. Mine hung slightly long. Everything about this setup screamed staged romance. The chef demonstrated knife skills with theatrical flair. Julienne versus Brunoise versus chiffonade. Adrian picked up his knife and executed perfect cuts immediately. Precise, controlled, clearly practiced from years of living alone in a penthouse and refusing to order delivery like a normal person. I hacked at my shallots like I was debugging stubborn code, functional but ugly. "You cook?" I asked, watching him work. "I live alone in a 42nd floor penthouse with a kitchen that costs more than most people's cars. Of course I cook. You?" "Microwave and prayer, sometimes not even prayer." "That explains the 17 ramen cups in your apartment boxes." I stopped chopping. "You counted my ramen cups?" "I inventoried your boxes. Professional curiosity." He swept perfectly minced shallots into a pristine white bowl. "You owned 42 technical manuals on machine learning and neural networks. 3 actual books of fiction, all unread. A mechanical keyboard worth $800. And absolutely no kitchen equipment except a coffee maker that had a short circuit. The coffee maker wasn't broken. It just had personality. It had a fire hazard that could have burned down your building and everyone in it. I threw it away. You threw away my coffee maker? I replaced it. There's a Technivorm in your office at the penthouse. Costs 6 times what yours did and won't kill you. I stared at him. You bought me a coffee maker. I bought my wife a coffee maker that won't cause insurance liability issues. It's good business sense. But something in his voice suggested it wasn't just business, that he'd noticed what I needed before I even moved in. We advanced to the next station. The chef demonstrated reduction techniques with the kind of passion usually reserved for describing true love. Adrian measured wine with a graduated beaker. I eyeballed it and poured. You're terrible at following instructions, he observed. I'm a founder. We don't follow instructions. We iterate until something works. I stirred the pot, watching liquid bubble. You're obsessed with precision. Control issues masked as perfectionism. That's exactly what my last therapist said before I fired her. You had a therapist? Past tense. She told me I needed to prioritize personal relationships over professional achievements. That my workaholism was avoidance behavior stemming from unprocessed trauma regarding my father's death. He adjusted the flame beneath his pan with micrometer precision. So I fired her and found a new therapist who agreed my work ethic was admirable. Did you actually find a new therapist? No, but I told my board I did. They seemed satisfied. I laughed, actually laughed. That's the most Adrian Blackwell solution I've ever heard. What about you? Therapy? Couldn't afford it. Used the money for server costs instead. Very healthy coping mechanism. Extremely healthy. We should write a self-help book. How to avoid your feelings through capitalism. Chapter 1. Work until you forget you have a body. Chapter 2. Monetize your trauma. We both started laughing. The other couples glanced over, probably wondering why the newlyweds were cackling about emotional avoidance while making French sauces. The chef circulated between stations, offering feedback with the kind of gentle criticism that suggested he'd dealt with wealthy people before and knew they didn't actually want honesty. He paused at our station, tasted both our reductions. Excellent work, you two. Very balanced flavors. Beautiful technique. He smiled warmly. And I must say, I love watching couples who bicker like an old married couple, even though you're newlyweds. That kind of comfort with each other is rare. Adrian and I looked at each other, realized we'd spent the entire class arguing about methodology while unconsciously coordinating our movements like a team that had worked together for years. He'd handed me ingredients before I asked. I'd adjusted his flame when he was occupied. We'd fallen into sync without noticing. Thank you, Adrian said smoothly. We keep each other sharp. My wife used to say the same thing. The chef's expression went soft. Best cooking partner I ever had. Even when we fought about whether garlic should be minced or pressed. Which is correct? I asked. Neither. Both. It depends on what you're making and who you're making it for. He patted Adrian's shoulder. The secret isn't the technique. It's knowing your partner well enough to anticipate what they need. After class, walking back to the suite through gardens that smelled like lavender and money, Adrian was unusually quiet. What? I asked. Nothing, just thinking. About? About how this would be significantly easier if you were actually insufferable, demanding, high maintenance, everything I typically avoid in people. Then I could maintain professional distance and remember this is a transaction. But instead you're annoyingly competent. You don't complain about anything. You work as hard as I do. We have the exact same coping mechanisms and childhood trauma patterns and inability to express feelings in healthy ways. He stopped walking, turned to face me. And I keep forgetting this is supposed to be temporary, that we're supposed to be pretending. My heart did something complicated, dangerous. Adrian, don't, he held up a hand. Don't say anything. We have rules. 6 months. No falling in love. Clean exit. Professional boundaries. I'm just... Acknowledging that you're not what I expected. That's all. What did you expect? Someone easier to compartmentalize. Someone I could look at and see a business partner instead of... He stopped himself. Never mind, we should get back. Photography session in an hour. Instead of what? He looked at me, really looked. Blue eyes that usually look cold but right now look scared. Instead of someone I might actually miss when this ends. He started walking again before I could respond. I stood in the lavender-scented garden, watching him retreat, feeling the walls we'd so carefully built starting to develop cracks. The problem with fake marriages is that eventually someone forgets they're supposed to be pretending. I was terrified it might be both of us. The photographer posed us throughout the resort, by the infinity pool, under oak trees, walking through vineyards hand in hand. Every shot carefully staged to look spontaneous. Closer, she directed. Adrian, put your arm around her waist. Sarah, lean into him. Look at him like he's the only person in the world. I looked up. Adrian looked down. Our faces inches apart. The camera clicked. Captured something that might have been real or might have been excellent acting. Beautiful, the photographer murmured. The chemistry is incredible. You can really see the love. Adrian's arm stayed around my waist, warm, steady, not moving even though the shot was done. One more, the photographer said. Adrian, make her laugh. Say something funny. He leaned close, whispered in my ear. This is the worst $50 million I've ever spent. I laughed. Genuinely. The camera caught it, my head thrown back, his face close to mine, both of us forgetting for just a second that this was performance. Perfect. That one's going to social media. So natural. Adrian's arm dropped. Professional distance restored. But I could still feel where he'd touched me. The warmth lingered. Back home, back to the penthouse, our sterile glass cage, reality crashed down like a wave. The hearing was in 6 days. The board dinner in 3. Adrian spent 14 hours a day with lawyers, preparing testimony, reviewing documents, practicing answers to questions designed to destroy him. I rebuilt Neuroscan's code, hired a new CTO, scheduled meetings with the hospital partnerships David's betrayal had jeopardized. We existed in parallel universes under the same roof. But something had changed in Napa. We'd started eating breakfast together. Not intentionally, just it happened. He'd make eggs. I'd make coffee. We'd sit at the counter and work on our laptops side by side. Tell me about your board, I said one morning, day 63 of our arrangement. What should I know before dinner? Marcus Chen, no relation, is the worst. Made his fortune in hostile takeovers. He'll ask inappropriate questions to see if you break. Such as? Such as whether we've consummated the marriage, whether you're pregnant, whether you have a prenup. Adrian sipped coffee. All designed to make you uncomfortable enough to reveal the truth, which is that we're in a contract marriage for mutual benefit, which we cannot let them discover. If they think this is fake, they'll vote me out before the hearing. I studied his face, the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight he carried. What happens if they vote you out? I lose the firm, lose my father's legacy, spend the rest of my life as the billionaire who got destroyed by his own board because he couldn't convince them he was human enough to lead. The pain in his voice was real, raw. Then we'll convince them, I said. We're both excellent liars, Adrian. We'll make them believe we're madly in love. How? I reached across the counter, took his hand, his fingers interlaced with mine automatically, muscle memory from 4 days of performance. Like this. Touch, eye contact, references to private moments they can't verify. We make them feel like they're intruding on something intimate. That's good, that's very good. But he didn't let go of my hand. Neither did I. There's one problem, he said quietly. What? I'm starting to forget which parts are performance. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Adrian, I know, rules, 6 months, no falling in love. He pulled his hand back. I'm just saying the lines are getting blurry. They're not blurry, they're very clear. This is a business transaction with a defined end date. Right, of course. He stood, grabbed his laptop. I have a meeting with my legal team. I'll be late tonight. He left before I could say anything else. I sat at the counter, staring at my coffee, feeling the ghost of his hand in mine. The lines weren't blurry, they were dissolving, and I had no idea how to stop it. Daniel Restaurant, 3 Michelin stars, a private dining room where 7 board members waited to dissect my marriage like a quarterly earnings report. I wore Dior, black, elegant, expensive. Adrian had sent it with a note. Look like you belong here. I belonged nowhere near here, but I'd learned to fake it. Adrian's hand rested on my lower back as we entered. Proprietary, possessive, exactly what they needed to see. Gentlemen, he said, this is Sarah, my wife. Marcus Chen stood first. Silver hair, shark eyes, smile like a knife. Mrs. Blackwell, what a pleasure. Adrian's been very secretive about you.
Sarah Chen Blackwell.
I corrected. I kept my name professionally, and the secrecy was my request. My company was fundraising. I didn't want the relationship to complicate the optics. Smart, he gestured to a chair. Please, sit. We have so many questions. The dinner was an interrogation disguised as conversation. They asked about how we met, when we decided to marry, why so quickly. Every question designed to expose cracks. Adrian and I performed flawlessly, told the story we'd rehearsed, made it sound spontaneous, romantic, real. But then Marcus leaned forward. Tell me, Sarah, what attracted you to Adrian? Specifically. A trap. Say money and we're done. Say anything generic and they'll know it's fake. I looked at Adrian. Let real emotion bleed into my voice. His honesty about being broken. Most successful men pretend they have it all figured out. Adrian told me on our second date that he doesn't sleep because he's haunted by finding his father dead. That he works until exhaustion to avoid feeling anything. That success hasn't made him happy. I paused. I fell in love with someone who admitted he was as fucked up as I am. Silence around the table. Adrian's hand found mine under the table, squeezed. Well, Marcus said slowly, that's certainly specific. The dinner continued, but something had shifted. They believed us, or at least they believed I believed it. After, in the car home, Adrian didn't let go of my hand. That was the most honest lie I've ever heard, he said. It wasn't entirely a lie. I know. His thumb traced circles on my palm. That's the problem. Days blurred. The hearing approached. Adrian barely slept. I barely ate. We orbited each other in the penthouse, 2 planets pulled by gravity we couldn't acknowledge. One night I found him on the balcony at 2 a.m., staring at the city, whiskey in hand. Can't sleep? I asked. Can I ever? He didn't look at me. The hearing is tomorrow. If this goes wrong, everything falls apart. I stood beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. You'll be fine. You're brilliant at this. Cold, calculated, prepared for every possible question. What if being cold is the problem? What if they want to see something human, and I don't know how to give them that? Then fake it, like we've been faking everything else. I'm tired of faking. He turned toward me. His eyes were too honest, too raw. I'm tired of pretending I don't look forward to breakfast with you, that I don't listen for your footsteps in the morning, that this hasn't become the most real thing in my life, even though it's supposed to be the most fake. My heart hammered. Adrian, I know. Rules, contract, expiration date. I'm not asking for anything, Sarah. I'm just telling you the truth for once. The truth is dangerous. The truth is all I have left. He set down his glass, stepped closer. Tell me you haven't felt it too. Tell me I'm alone in this. I should have lied. Should have reinforced the boundaries. Should have protected us both. Instead, I told the truth. You're not alone. He kissed me, or I kissed him. Later, I wouldn't remember who moved first, just that his mouth was on mine, his hands in my hair, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt something other than grief and ambition. I felt alive. We broke apart, both breathing hard, both terrified of what we just admitted. This complicates everything, I whispered. I know. We have rules. Fuck the rules. Adrian, tomorrow I go into that hearing and I might lose everything. My firm, my reputation, my father's legacy. His forehead rested against mine. But tonight, right now, I want something real. Just for a few hours. Can we have that? I should have said no, should have walked away, should have protected my heart. Instead, I kissed him again. And for one night, we forgot we were supposed to be pretending. I woke to empty sheets. Adrian's side of the bed, his bed, we'd ended up in his room, was cold. Dawn light crept through floor-to-ceiling windows. He stood on the balcony, already dressed in his court suit. Navy, silver tie, armor for battle. I wrapped myself in his sheet, joined him outside. The city looked clean in morning light, innocent. I have to leave in 20 minutes, he said without turning. I know. Last night, we don't have to talk about it right now. You need to focus on the hearing. We broke the rules. We did. He finally looked at me. His expression was unreadable. Regrets? Ask me when we know if you still have a firm to run. He almost smiled. Practical as always. One of us has to be. His driver texted, car downstairs, time to face the people who wanted to destroy him. Sarah, he cut my face, kissed me softly. Whatever happens today, you'll be fine. You're Adrian Blackwell. You eat congressional hearings for breakfast. I eat nothing for breakfast except anxiety. Then I'll make you eggs when you get home. Home. He tested the word. When did the penthouse become home? Somewhere between the fake honeymoon and the real feelings. He kissed me again. Then he left. I stood on the balcony, wrapped in expensive sheets, watching the city wake up, and wondered what we'd do if the marriage contract ended, but neither of us wanted to leave. I watched the hearing from a private gallery, screens showing Adrian's face as lawyers asked questions designed to destroy him. Mr. Blackwell, isn't it true your firm has acquired 43 competitors in the last decade? Yes. And isn't it true that 38 of those acquisitions resulted in the complete dissolution of the acquired company? Yes, that was the point. We bought failing companies and reallocated their assets to more efficient operations. Or you bought successful companies and destroyed them to eliminate competition. That's your interpretation. Mine is that I identified underperforming assets and optimized capital allocation. 3 hours of this. Adrian never broke, never showed emotion. Cold, calculated, brilliant. But I saw the exhaustion, the weight, the cost of being made of ice. Then the final question, the trap. Mr. Blackwell, you recently married, quite suddenly, some say conveniently timed with this investigation. Would you say your marriage is genuine, or is it a calculated PR move to humanize you before this committee? The room went silent. Adrian's face didn't change. My marriage is the most genuine thing in my life. My wife is brilliant, driven, and completely unimpressed by my net worth. She married me despite my reputation, not because of it. And frankly, this committee's interest in my personal life reveals more about your priorities than mine. So you deny this is a business arrangement? I deny that my marriage is any of your business. The lawyer smiled, thought he'd won. Then you won't mind if we call your wife to testify about the nature of your relationship. My blood went cold. Objection, Adrian's lawyer said. Mrs. Chen Blackwell is not under investigation, and has no legal obligation to testify. Overruled. If Mr. Blackwell claims this marriage is genuine, his wife should be able to confirm that under oath. Adrian's eyes found mine in the gallery. Terrified, apologetic. I stood. I'll testify. The witness chair felt like an execution platform. I swore on a Bible to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. The lawyer circled like a predator. Mrs. Chen Blackwell, you married Adrian Blackwell 6 weeks ago, correct? Correct. Had you known him long? 6 months. And in those 6 months, how often did you see each other? A trap. If I said too much, they'd question why we married so fast. Too little, and they'd know it was fake. As often as 2 people building companies can manage, which isn't much, but we made it count. How romantic. And when did he propose? After a dinner where we'd both admitted we were tired of being alone in our separate empires. Empires. Interesting word choice. Was his empire, his money, part of the attraction? No, his honesty was. I looked directly at the lawyer. Adrian told me he was broken, that success hadn't fixed him, that he didn't know how to be happy. I loved him for admitting what most men in his position would never say. That's a very prepared answer. That's a very honest answer. Would you prefer I lie to sound less rehearsed? Murmurs in the gallery. The lawyer's expression tightened. Let me ask directly, Mrs. Chen Blackwell. Did your husband invest $50 million in your company? My heart stopped. They knew. Someone had leaked. He did. Before or after you married? After. So you married a billionaire and then received $50 million from him. And you expect us to believe money had nothing to do with it? I could feel Adrian's panic from across the room. Could feel our entire arrangement crumbling. So I told the truth. The real truth. Yes, he invested in my company because I'd spent 3 years building a cancer detection platform to honor my sister who died of glioblastoma at 19. Because my CTO betrayed me and sold my code to a competitor. Because I was 30 days from bankruptcy when Adrian offered to help. I leaned forward. But I didn't marry him for the money. I married him because he understood what it's like to sacrifice everything for a dead person's legacy. Because he works until 3 a.m. to avoid nightmares about finding his father's body. Because he's the only person I've ever met who's as broken as I am. Silence in the room. We're both disasters, I continued. Both workaholics. Both building monuments to guilt. Both terrible at being human. But we're disasters together. And that's more real than whatever fairy tale you think marriage is supposed to be. The lawyer stared at me. No further questions. I left the stand, walked past Adrian. Our eyes met. He mouthed 2 words. Thank you. The committee deliberated for 6 hours. Adrian and I waited in a conference room, not speaking, both terrified of what we'd admitted under oath. Finally, they called us back. The head of the committee cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwell, after careful consideration of the evidence and testimony, this committee has determined that while your business practices are aggressive, they do not constitute illegal monopolistic behavior. Case dismissed. Adrian's lawyer looked stunned. That's it? That's it. You're free to go. Outside the courthouse, press swarmed. Questions erupted. Adrian ignored them all, grabbed my hand, pulled me toward the waiting car. Inside, doors closed, privacy restored, he turned to me. You saved me. You would have done the same. No, I wouldn't have. I would have calculated risk versus reward and thrown you under the bus if necessary. He took my face in his hands. But you told the truth. Real, messy, dangerous truth. For me. Adrian, I love you. The words came out rough, scared. I know that breaks every rule. I know we're supposed to be transactional. I know this ends in 6 months, but I'm in love with you and I don't know how to stop. My heart cracked open. I love you too, which is the stupidest thing I've ever admitted. What do we do now? I don't know. We still have a contract, an expiration date, rules we built to protect ourselves. Fuck the contract. He kissed me. Marry me for real. Not for $50 million or PR or survival. Marry me because you want to build something real out of all this fake. I kissed him back. We're already married, you idiot. Then let's stay married. Actually married. No exit clause. No business terms. Just two broken people figuring out how to be human together. That's the worst pitch I've ever heard. Is it working? Unfortunately, yes. We laughed, both of us. Two sharks who'd learned to breathe air. The car drove us home, to the penthouse that had stopped being a glass cage and started being something else. Something that might actually last. I woke to empty sheets and the sound of water running. Adrian's side of the bed, his bed, we'd ended up in his room, in his space. Crossing every line we'd drawn was cold. The indentation of his body remained in expensive linens, evidence that last night had been real and not some stress-induced hallucination. Dawnlight crept through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the city in shades of gold and regret. I wrapped myself in his sheet, navy blue, Egyptian cotton, probably cost more than my first month's rent, and padded to the balcony. The city looked clean in morning light, innocent, like it hadn't witnessed two people destroy their carefully constructed walls at 2 a.m. over whiskey and honesty. Adrian stood at the railing, already dressed in his court suit, navy, silver tie, the armor he wore when he needed to convince powerful people he was more than just a ruthless bastard who destroyed companies for profit. I have to leave in 20 minutes, he said without turning around. His voice sounded careful, controlled. Every trace of last night's vulnerability locked away behind boardroom professionalism. I know. I moved to stand beside him. The morning air bit cold against my bare shoulders. Last night, we don't have to talk about it right now. You need to focus on the hearing, on not letting them destroy everything you built. We broke the rules, every single one. He finally looked at me. His expression was unreadable, that carefully blank mask he wore in negotiations. The contract specifically stated no emotional entanglement, no falling in love, clean professional boundaries. I'm aware of what the contract said. Are you? His eyes searched mine. Because I'm trying to figure out if last night was a mistake we need to undo or if... Adrian, I cut him off before he could finish that thought, before either of us could say something that would make this morning more complicated than it already was. You have to walk into a room full of politicians and lawyers in 90 minutes. They're going to try to destroy you. This, us, whatever last night was, we can figure it out after you win, okay? And if I don't win, you'll win. You're Adrian Blackwell. You eat congressional hearings for breakfast. I eat nothing for breakfast except anxiety and black coffee. Then I'll make you eggs when you get home. The words slipped out before I could stop it. Home. Not get back or return to the penthouse. Home. His expression shifted. Something soft breaking through the careful control. Home. He tested the word like it was a foreign language. When did this place become home instead of a glass cage we're both trapped in? Somewhere between the fake honeymoon and the very real feelings. I pulled the sheet tighter. Go. Focus. Win. We'll figure out the rest later. He stepped closer, cupped my face with both hands. The gesture was tender in a way that made my chest ache. Sarah, whatever happens today, you'll be fine. You're the smartest person in any room, even rooms full of people trying to destroy you. He kissed me, soft, brief, like a promise or an apology, or both. Then his phone buzzed. His driver. Car downstairs. Time to face the people who wanted to make an example of him. Go, I said. I'll be watching from the gallery. And Adrian? Yes. Don't let them make you into something you're not. You're ruthless and calculating, and you've destroyed 43 companies. Own it. Don't apologize for being good at what you do. He almost smiled. That's terrible legal advice. Good thing I'm not your lawyer. I'm your wife. Real wife or contract wife, neither of us knew anymore. But he kissed me again before he left, and that felt like an answer to a question we were both too scared to ask. I stood on the balcony, wrapped in expensive sheets that smelled like him, watching the city wake up, and wondered what we'd do if the contract ended, but neither of us wanted to leave. I watched the hearing from a private gallery reserved for family members and other people deemed important enough for good seats. Adrian's lawyer had gotten me clearance. Security checked my ID 3 times before letting me through. The hearing room looked exactly like it did on television. Wood paneling, American flags, stern-faced committee members sitting at an elevated bench like judges. Adrian sat at a table facing them, flanked by lawyers in suits that probably cost 5 figures each. He looked calm, controlled. Every inch the billionaire who'd built an empire on calculated risk and ruthless efficiency. The committee chair, a senator from Ohio with political ambitions and a reputation for destroying tech CEOs, opened with pleasantries that barely masked the hostility underneath. Mr. Blackwell, thank you for appearing before us today. I'm sure you're busy destroying small businesses and crushing entrepreneurs. Adrian didn't flinch. Senator, thank you for the invitation. I cleared my schedule of all the small businesses I typically destroy on Thursdays. They'll have to wait until Friday. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. His lawyer looked nervous. I bit back a smile. The senator's expression tightened. Let's begin. Your firm, Blackwell Capital, has acquired 43 companies in the last decade. Is that correct? 47, actually. Your research team missed 4. And of those 47 acquisitions, how many companies are still operating as independent entities? 9. So you destroyed 38 companies. I optimized 38 companies by reallocating their assets to more efficient operations, eliminating redundancies, and consolidating market share. But if you'd prefer the dramatic phrasing, yes, I destroyed them. 3 hours of this. Question after question designed to paint Adrian as a monopolistic villain who crushed competition for sport. He answered everything with brutal honesty and zero apology. Every time they tried to make him look ashamed, he doubled down. Mr. Blackwell, don't you feel any remorse for the thousands of jobs lost when you shut down these companies? No. I feel satisfaction that capital was redirected from failing businesses to successful ones. Creative destruction is the foundation of capitalism. If you have a problem with that, perhaps you should be holding hearings about the economic system itself rather than the people who excel at it. His lawyer looked like he was having a heart attack. The senator looked furious. I'd never been more attracted to anyone in my entire life. Then came the trap, the final question, the one designed to break him. Mr. Blackwell, you recently married, quite suddenly. Some observers have noted the convenient timing, just weeks before this investigation became public. Would you characterize your marriage as genuine or as a calculated PR move to humanize yourself before this committee? The room went silent. Every camera, every reporter, every political operative waited for his answer. Adrian's face didn't change, but I saw his hands tighten slightly on the table, saw the micro-expression of fear before he buried it under control. My marriage is the most genuine thing in my life. My wife is brilliant, driven, and completely unimpressed by my net worth or reputation. She married me despite knowing exactly what I am, not in spite of it, because of it, because she understands that success requires sacrifice, that building something meaningful costs everything, that some of us are broken in ways that make conventional relationships impossible. He paused. And frankly, Senator, this committee's obsession with my personal life reveals more about your priorities than mine. So you deny this is a business arrangement? I deny that my marriage is any of your goddamn business. His lawyer actually put his head in his hands. The senator smiled, thought he'd won. Then you won't mind if we call your wife to testify about the nature of your relationship? Under oath? My blood went cold. Adrian's eyes found mine in the gallery. Terrified, apologetic. He tried to protect me from this and failed. Objection, his lawyer said weakly. Mrs. Chen Blackwell is not under investigation and has no legal obligation to testify. Overruled. If Mr. Blackwell claims this marriage is genuine, his wife should be able to confirm that. Under oath. Or is there something she'd like to hide? I stood before I consciously decided to move. I'll testify. Adrian's expression shattered, rebuilt itself. He nodded once. Permission. Trust. I walked to the witness stand feeling like I was walking toward a firing squad. The Bible felt heavy in my hand. I swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Wondered which truth they actually wanted, the legal one or the real one. The senator circled the witness stand like a predator who'd finally cornered prey. Mrs. Chen Blackwell, thank you for volunteering to testify. Very civic-minded of you. I prefer Sarah Chen professionally. Chen Blackwell is just for legal documents. Of course, Sarah. You married Adrian Blackwell 6 weeks ago, correct? Correct. Had you known him long before that? 6 months. We met at a healthcare innovation gala in May. And in those 6 months, how frequently did you see each other? Given that you both run companies, I imagine time was limited. A trap. Say too much and they'd question the rapid marriage. Too little and they'd know it was fake. As often as two workaholics can manage, which isn't much, but we made the time count. Late night calls, early morning coffee, working side by side on our respective projects. We built a relationship in the margins of our schedules. How romantic. Relationship margins. The senator smiled, shark-like. Tell me about the proposal. How did Mr. Blackwell ask you to marry him? I remembered that night. Not the fake story we'd rehearsed, but the real moment. Standing in his kitchen at midnight, him asking, what exactly would this arrangement entail, while I calculated whether selling 6 months of my life was worth saving my sister's legacy. He told me he was tired of being alone, that success had cost him everything human about himself, that he'd spent 15 years building an empire and had no one to share it with except lawyers and accountants. I met Adrian's eyes across the courtroom. He asked if I'd be willing to try building something real in the middle of all the professional chaos. I said yes. The senator's expression flickered. That wasn't the answer he'd expected. And when did he propose, exactly? Before or after his firm came under investigation? After. Does that matter? It matters if you're suggesting this isn't a calculated PR move. Senator, I'm a startup founder. I understand calculated PR moves. This wasn't one. I leaned forward. Do you want to know what a calculated PR move looks like? It looks like carefully staged photo opportunities with diverse employees. It looks like donating to politically convenient charities. It looks like hiring a crisis management firm to draft your apology statements. I paused. Marrying someone you barely know to make politicians like you seems like a terrible PR strategy. Way too many variables, too much risk, too easy to expose. And yet here we are, with a sudden marriage between a ruthless billionaire and a sympathetic startup founder, right before a major investigation. Yes, here we are. Would you like to know why I actually said yes? Please, enlighten us. Because Adrian invested $50 million in my company. Because my CTO had just betrayed me and sold my code to a competitor. Because I was 30 days from bankruptcy and watching 3 years of work I'd done to honor my sister who died of brain cancer at 19, circle the drain. I let the words hang. So yes, Senator, there was a business component. He needed a wife to humanize him. I needed capital to save my company. We made a deal. The courtroom erupted. Adrian's lawyer looked like he was dying. The senator looked triumphant. Adrian just stared at me, expressionless. I wasn't finished. But that's not why I'm still here. That's not why I sleep in his bed instead of the guest room we agreed on. That's not why I make coffee the way he likes it, or listen for his shower at 5 a.m., or know that he has nightmares about finding his father's body. My voice cracked. I'm here because somewhere between the contract and the performance, I fell in love with the most broken, brilliant, impossible person I've ever met. Someone who understands what it's like to sacrifice everything for a dead person's legacy. Someone who works until exhaustion to avoid feeling anything. Someone who's exactly as fucked up as I am. Dead silence in the courtroom. We're both disasters, Senator. Both workaholics building monuments to guilt. Both terrible at being human. But we're disasters together. And that's more real than whatever fairy tale version of marriage you think we should be performing. The senator stared at me. Mrs. Chen Blackwell. Sarah. Sarah. Are you saying this marriage began as a business transaction, but became real? I'm saying all marriages are transactions. Some people trade love for security. Some trade companionship for financial stability. Some trade shared values for social status. Adrian and I traded capital for credibility. The difference is, we're honest about it. That's quite a cynical view of marriage. That's quite a realistic view of marriage. Most people just aren't honest enough to admit what they're trading. No further questions. The senator sat down. He looked confused, like I'd refused to play the game correctly. Adrian's lawyer stood. The defense has no questions for this witness. I left the stand, walked past Adrian. Our eyes met. I couldn't read his expression. Couldn't tell if I just saved him or destroyed everything we'd built. Outside the courtroom, I sat in a bathroom stall and shook for 20 minutes. I just admitted our marriage was fake on national television, and also that it was real. And I had no idea which truth would matter more. The committee deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours of me sitting in that bathroom, then in a conference room, then pacing the courthouse hallway like a criminal awaiting sentencing. Adrian's lawyer found me at 4:47 p.m. They're ready. Verdict's coming through now. I followed him back to the hearing room. Adrian stood at his table, spine straight, face blank. He glanced at me once. I couldn't read his expression. The committee chair cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwell, after careful consideration of the evidence presented and testimony from both you and your wife, this committee has determined that while your business practices are aggressive and perhaps ethically questionable, they do not constitute illegal, monopolistic behavior under current antitrust law. Case dismissed. Adrian's lawyer exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 6 hours. That's it? That's it. You're free to go, Mr. Blackwell. This committee has no further business with you. The press erupted. Questions shouted from every direction. Adrian ignored them all, grabbed my hand, pulled me toward the exit with single-minded focus. His driver had the car waiting. We fell into the back seat, doors closed, privacy glass up, moving through traffic toward the penthouse. Silence. Adrian stared out the window. I stared at my hands. You told them, he said finally, about the contract, about it being fake. I told them the truth. Which truth? There seemed to be several versions. The truth that we married for business reasons that became something else. Became what, exactly? I turned to look at him. I don't know, you tell me. Was last night real, or was it another performance? Don't. His voice went hard. Don't question whether last night was real when you just told a congressional committee our entire marriage is a transaction. It started as a transaction. You know that. We both know that. And now? Now I don't know what it is. Do you? He finally looked at me, really looked. And for the first time since I'd met him, Adrian Blackwell looked completely lost. I watched you testify, watched you tell them about the contract and the money and the calculated deal we made. Every word was true. Every word made me look like exactly what they think I am. A ruthless bastard who buys people the same way I buy companies. Adrian. Then you said you fell in love with me, in front of cameras, reporters, the entire world. You said it like it was true. It is true. How do I know? The pain in his voice cracked something in my chest. How do I know any of this is real when we built it on lies? Because lies don't feel like this. My voice came out too loud, too raw. Lies don't keep you awake at night. They don't make you memorize how someone takes their coffee, or what time they shower, or which side of the bed they prefer. Lies are easy. This, us, whatever this is, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Why? Because falling in love with you wasn't part of the plan. Because I've spent 3 years teaching myself not to feel anything except ambition and grief. And now you've destroyed all that careful numbness, and I don't know how to function anymore. The car pulled up to the penthouse. We sat in silence. I don't know how to do this, Adrian said quietly. Real relationships, emotional vulnerability, trusting someone not to leverage my feelings as a negotiation tactic. Neither do I. So what do we do? I don't know. We got out of the car, rode the elevator up 42 floors, walked into the penthouse that had stopped being a glass cage and started being something else. Adrian went to his office, closed the door. I went to mine, closed the door. We'd won the hearing, survived the investigation, convinced the world we were exactly what we pretended to be. And somehow that felt like losing. We didn't speak for 3 days, existed in parallel universes under the same roof, passed each other in hallways like ghosts, made coffee at different times to avoid the kitchen counter where we'd started accidentally building a morning routine. I buried myself in work. Neuroscan's Series B closed, hospital partnerships signed, new CTO started. Everything I'd sacrificed for was finally working. It felt hollow. Adrian barely left his office. I heard him on calls at all hours, closing deals, destroying competitors, building his empire higher and colder. On day 3, I found him on the balcony at 2 a.m. Same spot where we'd crossed every line we'd drawn. He had whiskey, I had wine. We stood at opposite ends of the balcony like magnets with wrong poles facing. Congratulations on your Series B, he said, formal, distant. I saw the announcement, 50 million at a 300 million valuation. Impressive. Thank you for making it possible. That's what the contract specified. Capital investment in exchange for marriage performance. Terms fulfilled. Right, terms fulfilled. Silence stretched. The city glittered below us. Indifferent to 2 people destroying something beautiful because they were both too broken to know how to keep it. The contract expires in 3 months, Adrian said. We agreed on 6 months minimum. That deadline approaches. I'm aware. We should discuss exit terms, divorce filing, asset division, public statement about growing apart. Of course, very practical. Unless, he stopped, took a long drink. Unless you want something different. My heart hammered. What would different look like? I don't know. That's the problem. I've spent my entire life calculating risk versus reward, optimizing outcomes, maximizing efficiency, but I can't calculate this, can't optimize us, can't predict whether trying to make this real will destroy us both or save us both. I moved closer, close enough to see his face in moonlight, the exhaustion carved into his features, the hope he was trying to hide behind practicality. What do you want, Adrian? Forget the calculations. Forget the risk analysis. What do you actually want? He looked at me, really looked. All the careful control stripped away. You. I want you. Not the wife I hired for 6 months. Not the business partner with equity stakes. Just you. Sarah. The woman who runs 5 miles every morning and makes terrible coffee and argues with me about knife techniques and testifies under oath that she loves me, even though it ruins both our carefully crafted images. That's a terrible risk. I know. We could destroy each other. Probably. We're both disasters at relationships. Absolutely. So what's the plan? I don't have one. For the first time in my life, I'm making a decision without a risk mitigation strategy or exit clause or contingency plan. He set down his glass, took my hands. Marry me. Actually, marry me. Not for $50 million or PR or survival. Marry me because you want to see if two broken people can figure out how to be human together. Adrian, we're already married. That was a contract. This is a choice. Choose me. I'll choose you. We'll figure out the rest. I should have said no. Should have taken the clean exit. Should have protected both our hearts from the inevitable disaster of trying to turn a transaction into forever. Instead, I kissed him. Yes. Yes? Yes. Let's be disasters together. He kissed me back, soft and desperate and terrified. Two people jumping off a cliff and hoping they'd build wings on the way down. The next morning, Adrian was still there when I woke up. Actually there, in bed beside me, not already dressed and armored for the day. Hi, I said. Hi. He looked nervous. Adrian Blackwell, who destroyed companies before breakfast, looked nervous about morning after conversation. So, we're doing this? Actually doing this? I think so. Unless you've had second thoughts in the last 6 hours. Many second thoughts. Also third and fourth thoughts. But I keep coming back to the same conclusion, which is that I'd rather be a disaster with you than successful and alone. I prop myself up on one elbow. But we need to actually build this properly, not just fall into it because we're convenient and we already share a bathroom. Agreed. What does properly look like? Dating, actually dating. Learning about each other beyond work histories and childhood trauma. We know each other better than most married couples. We know each other's professional achievements and psychological damage. We don't know each other's favorite movies or what we do for fun, or if we even have hobbies beyond working ourselves to death. Fair point, Adrian sat up. Okay, let's do it. Proper dating, starting now. Now? Why not? We've done everything backwards. Married before dating, sex before emotional intimacy, testified about our love before actually defining what our love is. Might as well date while already married. I laughed. That's the most Adrian Blackwell solution I've ever heard. Is that a yes? That's a yes. We spent the day like we'd never spent time before, without laptops, without work, without the constant hum of productivity drowning out every other instinct. Adrian took me to the boxing gym where he worked out at 4 a.m., taught me how to wrap my hands properly, laughed when I nearly knocked myself out trying to punch the heavy bag, caught me when I stumbled. I took him to the community garden where Maya and I used to volunteer, showed him how to deadhead roses. He was terrible at it, too precise, too controlled. I taught him to let things be messy. We talked, actually talked, about things that mattered and things that didn't, favorite books, worst first dates, the small moments that shaped us beyond the big traumas. I wanted to be a pianist, Adrian admitted. Had a teacher for 6 years. My father said it was impractical. Made me quit when I was 14. Do you still play? Sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep. There's a piano in the study. I didn't know if you knew. I thought it was decorative. Play for me sometime? I'd like to hear it. By the end of the day, we'd learned 100 small things about each other. None of them related to net worth or market share or the empires we'd built. This is nice, I said, being human together. Terrifying, but nice. Can we do it again tomorrow? I have a board meeting at 9 and acquisition calls until 4. Then after. We do this after. Make time for the human parts. Okay, he kissed my forehead. Let's try being disasters who occasionally remember to be people. The email arrived on a Tuesday. Adrian's assistant forwarded it to both of us with a note. Thought you should see this. From Victoria Ashford. Subject: Congratulations on your marriage. Adrian, I saw your hearing testimony. Very touching. The devoted husband act almost looked real. I suppose congratulations are in order. You finally found someone naive enough to believe you're capable of love. I'm in town next week for a charity gala, the Parks Foundation event. I assume you'll be there with your new wife? I'd love to meet her. Compare notes. I have such interesting stories about our time together. Do give her my best. Regards, Victoria. I looked up from my laptop. Adrian stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand, face carefully blank. Who's Victoria Ashford? My ex-fiancée. He set down his coffee, sat across from me. The one I mentioned, the woman who faked a pregnancy to trap you into marriage, then took a settlement and disappeared. Right, that ex. She disappeared to London. Apparently she's back, and threatening to expose us at a very public charity event. That appears to be her plan. I reread the email, the barely veiled malice underneath polite words. What does she actually know? Everything. She was there when I drafted the initial contract terms. Before I met you, I'd been considering hiring someone for this exact arrangement. Victoria found the paperwork on my desk. We fought about it. She said I was incapable of real feelings, that I'd die alone in my penthouse, surrounded by money and nothing else. Sounds like she might have been right. She was right, until she wasn't. Adrian reached across the table, took my hand. Sarah, she's going to try to destroy this. She knows exactly which wounds to press. She'll make you doubt everything we've built. So we don't go to the gala. We have to go. My firm is a sponsor. The board expects me there. If we hide, she wins. Then we face her, together. Show her that whatever this started as, it's real now. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying. But we've faced congressional hearings and testified under oath and survived 3 days of silent treatment because we're both emotionally stunted disasters. We can handle one vindictive ex-fiancé. Adrian almost smiled. When did you become the optimistic one? When I realized I'd rather fight for us than let someone else destroy what we're building. The Parks Foundation Gala looked exactly like every other charity event for wealthy people. Designer gowns, open bar, auction items nobody needed but everyone bid on to prove their generosity was bigger than someone else's. I wore black, simple, elegant. Adrian's hand rested on my lower back as we navigated the crowd. Real this time, not performance. Just the steady reassurance that we were facing this together. Victoria found us by the champagne fountain. Tall, blonde, perfectly composed in red silk that probably cost more than my first car. She looked like every billionaire's trophy wife. Beautiful, polished, cold. Adrian. Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. And this must be Sarah, the woman who succeeded where I failed. How impressive. Victoria, Adrian's voice stayed neutral. This is my wife, Sarah Chen Blackwell. Chen Blackwell, hyphenated, how modern. She turned to me. Tell me, Sarah, how long did you know Adrian before you married him? I'm always curious about whirlwind romances. 6 months, I kept my voice level, refused to let her see any cracks. 6 months, fascinating. And during that time, did he mention his little arrangement? The contract he drafted for hiring a wife before he conveniently met you? The trap snapped shut. She'd said it, out loud, at a gala full of board members and donors and journalists. Adrian's hand tightened on my back. I could feel his fear bleeding through. I smiled, took a sip of champagne, let her think she'd won. Actually, he did mention it, on our second date. He told me he'd been considering a contractual arrangement because he didn't believe anyone would marry him for anything other than money. He'd been hurt before, badly, by someone who faked a pregnancy to trap him, then took a settlement and disappeared. Victoria's expression flickered. Adrian told you about that? He tells me everything, because that's what actual marriages are built on. Honesty, even when it's ugly, especially when it's ugly. I set down my glass, stepped closer to her. Yes, Adrian and I signed a contract. Yes, there was money involved. Yes, it started as a transaction. But it became something real because we were honest about what we were trading. Unlike some people who pretend to be pregnant to extract settlements. I was pregnant, you weren't. The medical records Adrian's lawyers obtained confirmed it. There was no pregnancy, no miscarriage, just a very calculated con that netted you $5 million and taught Adrian that women only want him for his money. Silence expanded around us. People were staring now, phone cameras probably recording. Adrian looked at me, shocked. I'd never told him I'd seen those medical records. Never told him I'd done my own research before agreeing to marry him. So thank you, Victoria, I continued. Thank you for breaking him so completely that when I came along, he was honest about being broken. That honesty is the only reason we worked. If you'd been a better liar, Adrian might still believe love was possible. But you taught him it wasn't. And that made room for me to prove him wrong. Victoria's face went pale, then red. She grabbed her clutch. You deserve each other. Two cold, calculating sociopaths playing house. Maybe we are, but we're happy sociopaths playing house. Can you say the same? She walked away, heels clicking on marble. Dignity in shreds. Adrian turned to me. You read her medical records? I read everything. Due diligence, same as you did on me. I fell in love with a woman who does hostile due diligence before committing to relationships. Is that a compliment? That's the highest compliment I'm capable of giving. He kissed me in front of everyone. His board, the donors, the journalists with their cameras. Kissed me like he meant it, like we were real, because we were. That night, back at the penthouse, Adrian pulled out a document from his desk drawer. I want to show you something. I drafted it last week, before Victoria's email, before the gala, before I knew if you'd actually want this to be real. He handed me papers, legal documents, not the original contract, but something new. I read through it, frowned. Adrian, this is a post-nuptial agreement, drafted to replace the original contract. But this gives me half of everything. Your firm, your assets, complete equality in decision-making. This is what you deserve. What we should have had from the start if this was ever going to be real. He sat beside me. The original contract was about protecting myself. This one is about protecting us, both of us, equally. You don't have to do this. I know, but I want to. I want you to know that I'm not holding exit clauses over your head, that this isn't about money or leverage or insurance policies. This is me saying I trust you with everything, including the parts of myself I swore I'd never trust anyone with again. I stared at the contract, at the legal language that translated to, I love you and I'm terrified, but I'm choosing you anyway. There's one condition, he said. What? You have to actually marry me, not the contract version, not the arrangement we made in your desperation and mine. Actually marry me. Vows, you mean. Promises you want to keep. A wedding that's about us instead of about saving companies or reputations. We're already married. That was survival. This would be choice. Choose me. I've already chosen you. I looked at the contract, at the man offering me half his empire because he'd learned to trust someone with his heart. Okay. Okay? Yes. I'll marry you. Again. Properly this time. With witnesses who aren't bound by NDAs and vows that actually mean something. I signed the post-nuptial agreement, watched him sign below my name. But I have conditions too. Name them. We go to therapy, both of us, together. We figure out how to be functional humans instead of workaholics using each other to avoid our feelings. Agreed. We take vacations, real ones, where we turn off our phones and laptops And remember, we have bodies that need rest. Terrifying, but agreed. And we tell the truth, always, even when it's ugly, even when it's easier to lie. That's the only way this works. We sat in his office, our office, it was ours now, holding the new contract that said we were partners in everything. When should we do it? I asked. The real wedding? Whenever you want, big ceremony or small, church or courthouse. I don't care as long as you're there. Small, just us and people who actually matter. No press, no performance, just truth. Perfect. We got married 3 weeks later in the same courthouse where we'd signed the first contract. But this time there were real witnesses. My old roommate from MIT, Adrian's lawyer who'd become something like a friend, the hospital administrator who'd believed in neuroscan when no one else did. No designer dress, no professional makeup team. I wore a simple white dress I'd bought myself. Adrian wore a navy suit but no tie. Casual. Human. The same officiant married us. He recognized us from 6 months earlier. Looked confused. Didn't I already? This is the real one, Adrian said. Last time was practice. The officiant smiled. Started the ceremony properly this time, with the full speech about love and commitment in sacred bonds. Do you, Sarah Chen, take Adrian Blackwell to be your husband, to love and cherish, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? I do, I absolutely do. Do you, Adrian Blackwell, take Sarah Chen to be your wife, to love and cherish, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? Yes. His voice cracked slightly. Yes, always. Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you, again, husband and wife. You may kiss the bride, for real this time. Adrian cupped my face, kissed me soft and slow and certain, kissed me like we had forever, like we were building something that would last. Our friends cheered. The officiant looked satisfied, like he'd redeemed our first ceremony. Outside, no car waited. No press, no performance, just us. We walked home, 42 floors up, back to the penthouse that had stopped being a glass cage and started being where we lived, where we fought and laughed and slowly learned how to be human together. That night, Adrian played piano for the first time while I listened. Mozart, Debussy, Chopin, beautiful and imperfect, like us. I love you, I said when he finished. And not because you invested in my company, or because you're brilliant, or because you're broken in the same ways I am. I love you because you play piano at 2 a.m., and you make terrible jokes when you're nervous, and you bought me a coffee maker that won't kill me. I love you too, and not because you saved me from a congressional hearing, or because you challenged Victoria, or because you agreed to marry me twice. I love you because you run 5 miles every morning and argue with me about everything, and you're the first person who made me want to stop working long enough to actually live. We didn't have sex that night, just fell asleep holding each other. 2 sharks who'd learned to breathe air. 2 disasters who'd figured out how to be human. 6 months later, Neuroscan got FDA approval. Adrian's firm hit record profits. We bought a dog, a rescue with 3 legs who'd been through hell and survived anyway. We named her Maya. 1 year later, I found Adrian on the balcony at 2 a.m., usual whiskey in hand, looking at the city we'd both tried to conquer. Can't sleep? I asked. Not anymore. Now I just come out here because I like the view. Of the city? Of you, standing next to me, choosing to stay. I took his whiskey, took a sip, handed it back. I'll always stay, even when you're impossible, especially when you're impossible. That's a terrible life plan. It's the only plan I have, and it's working. 2 years later, Neuroscan saved its first life. A woman in Seattle, 43 years old, mother of 2, early-stage glioblastoma detected by our AI 3 months before traditional scans would have caught it. I broke down in Adrian's arms, ugly crying. relief and grief, and the knowledge that Maya's death had finally meant something. "She'd be proud," Adrian whispered. "Your sister, she'd be so proud." I kept my promise. You did. You absolutely did. 3 years later, we expanded the penthouse, knocked down walls, added color, made it feel less like a museum and more like a home. Adrian's piano sat in the living room now. My bookshelves covered entire walls. Maya the dog slept on furniture we'd actually picked out together. One morning over coffee and eggs, Adrian looked up from his laptop. "I've been thinking." Dangerous. "About hiring. Neuroscan needs a CFO, someone who understands scaling, capital strategy, long-term financial planning. Do you have someone in mind?" "Me. I want to join your company, not as an investor, as an employee. Your CFO, your partner." "Adrian, you run a billion-dollar investment firm." "I know, and I'm tired of it. Tired of destroying companies. Tired of optimizing capital allocation. I want to build something instead of just extracting value." He took my hand. "I want to help you save lives. Make your sister's legacy bigger than either of us could alone." "You'd give up your firm?" "I'd give up anything for you. For this. For the chance to do something that actually matters." "That's the worst business decision you've ever made." "It's the best human decision I've ever made." 6 months later, Adrian Blackwell officially stepped down as CEO of Blackwell Capital. The business press called it shocking, a waste of talent, the end of an era. He called it the beginning of actually living. Together, we built Neuroscan into something neither of us could have created alone, saved thousands of lives, proved that two broken people could fix themselves by building something beautiful together. And every night, we came home to our penthouse, our dog, our life, the one we'd chosen instead of the one we'd calculated. "Was it worth it?" Adrian asked once. "Trading the contract for real marriage? The certainty of exit clauses for the uncertainty of forever?" "Yes," I said. "Every impossible day, every argument, every moment of actually being human together, all of it, worth it. Even though we're still disasters? Especially because we're still disasters. But we're disasters who learn to love each other. And that's more valuable than anything either of us ever built alone." We stood on the balcony, the same balcony where we'd first crossed every line we'd drawn, and watched the city glitter below. Two sharks who'd learned to breathe air. Two disasters who'd figured out how to be human. Two people who'd married for $50 million and ended up with something worth infinitely more. Love. Real, messy, impossible, forever love. And that was the best investment either of us ever made.